Now, quickly, as we're getting settled here, just a quick show of hands. How many of you have ever been duped by a billboard? You've been tricked by a billboard. You know the ones that I'm talking about, right? It's the kind that makes these incredible promises and have the most amazing pictures, right? For me, it's usually like a cigar shop. There's like the county's best cigar shop or the best cigar shop in Virginia. And then you go there and it's like, my humidor's bigger, right? Right? They make these incredible promises and they have the most amazing pictures, like best coffee in the universe, exit now. And you're like, okay. Or you see one that says like live gators and you're in like Iowa. And you're like, that's cool. I got to see the gators in Iowa. Or my personal favorite, south of the border. You guys know what I'm talking about, south of the border? Who's been that far down on 95? Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? South of the border, and then the billboard will say, like, only 94 more billboards to go, right? If you don't know, the south of the border, it's just south of the border of North Carolina going into South Carolina. Now, listen. Have you been victimized by this? Right? Let me tell you, because I have been victimized by south of the border. Christina and I were driving down to a family vacation in Georgia one year, and those south of the border signs were working on me. Right? They were working on me. Every like 5.6 miles, bam, another promise, fireworks. Right? You go another 3.5 miles and there's a sombrero tower that you have to see coming up. Right? And then you go a little bit further and it's like mystery meat store. Like what can you get? Right? And there's talking statues. There's the world's best hat collection. There's all these things. So I'm in my mind driving down 95 and I'm picturing Six Flags meets Epcot meets the best taco truck in the world. Right? That's what I'm picturing. That's what I'm hoping. And so I have to work my magic on Christina to convince her that we do indeed need to stop at this place with all the billboards, that this is essential for our family vacation to start on the right foot because it's going to change our lives. Right? And so after like 40-some billboards worth of convincing and 20 billboards keeping us in anticipation, we finally arrived at south of the border. And it was, how do I say, like Jesus would? It was awful. Right? I mean, it was awful, right? Right? It was like a gas station married a yard sale and they had a baby in 1962. Right? And then they never cleaned up. They just left the mess, right? We pulled in and I'm looking around like, where's the magic? Where's the fireworks eating dragon that they promised? Where's Pedro, the mascot? Right? And where's my churro in this life-changing moment? Listen, it was all signs and absolutely no substance. I mean, like the bathroom stall had no door. I still went because I had to, but right? It was all promise. There was no payoff. And y'all, as dumb as it sounds, I still remember that feeling, right? It was a mixture of disappointed, like confusion. I'm like, whoa, I just got played, right? And then I kind of got a little angry, mainly because Christina was laughing at me the whole time. But the worst thing was being embarrassed because I fell for it. All those billboards. I mean, I bought the whole sales pitch, hook, line, and sombrero, right? I let those signs build this whole world in my head. I thought this was going to be the best place in the world, right? I was expecting magic, and I got a plastic flamingo next to a vending machine that ate my dollar bill. Right? You guys are laughing because it happened to you too. Right? We all got played. Right? And that's the thing about hype, isn't it? Isn't that the thing about hype in today's world? Whether it's billboards, Instagram filters, or a Sunday morning smile type of Christianity. It always covers up what is actually happening inside. All right? Those billboards were amazing. Inside the actual stop, it was horrible. Right? We've all gotten really good, right? Maybe too good, if we're honest, at crafting a life that looks perfect from every angle. Every photo, every story, every post is carefully crafted and polished so it says, I've got this. I've got this. Right? I'm good. I've got this. It's okay. Everything's okay. I've got this. Everything's hunky-dory. I got this. Right? And people see that, and they get excited, and they want to be a part of it, like those stupid south of the border billboards. It draws people in. Right? And listen, just being honest, Foundry Church, right? And they want to be you, or like you in that version of you that you're posting in those highlight reels, or however we're presenting ourselves. And here's the kicker, right? We've learned how to do the same thing spiritually. We've learned to do the same thing as we forge a lifelong reliance upon our God, the God of the universe. We've gotten so good, Foundry Church, at curating a faith highlight reel that sometimes the real, messy, growing, struggling parts of life get left on the cutting floor room. Right? We think we should smile as we walk through the lobby at church. Right? We shouldn't let our neighbors see the rough side. We practice the right words to say in small group. I used to have a friend. She got her Bible for the first time, like a brand new Bible for the very first time. And she was a little self-conscious, so she started highlighting just random things, right? So, like, if people noticed, like, her Bible was highlighted, right? We've got the Bible app on our phone, and we check the streak. As long as I open the app every day, we get this streak, and we get like points, and so we gamify it, right? Right? On a side note, I use the kids version because they have cooler games on it. But if we're honest, there's a gap. Right? Look at it like this. There's a gap between the image that we're projecting and the reality of what's actually going on inside of us as disciples of Jesus, who make disciples of Jesus, as people who are forging that lifelong reliance on God. Right? And this is a dangerous place to be, right? Because the hype, the images that we're projecting or sharing or whatever, the lies that we're telling ourselves and others, they're pretty convincing. Right? They're pretty convincing. They're convincing to everyone else, and sometimes they're even more especially convincing to ourselves. We start believing in our own highlight reel. Right? Last night, Christina actually helped us out. She filmed, I coached football, and there was a blue and white scrimmage, our first inter-squad scrimmage. We had 2-a-days this last week. That's why I have no voice. Pray with me, because next week is 3-a-days. And she actually was filming last night, right? And I mean, we aren't even home yet, and the players, they want to film. Not to study it, to get better, right? They want to see who they, beat, and they want to post on a highlight reel, right? They want the right angle. I got a text and said, do we have any other angles? No, there was 4 cameras. That was enough, right? You want to wear a camera while you're out there, right? We get these highlight reels in our lives for whatever it is, but deep down, when the noise dies down, when the lights are off, when it's just us and God and being a disciple, a child, a son, or a daughter of His, we know our roots, if we're honest, are just not that deep, right? Just like some of my players who want all the glory, but they don't want to work in the weight room, right? We know that there's a disconnect. We know that we are in real pain. It's the quiet ache that we have that we just can't hide away any longer. We can fill our day with meetings. We can fill our day with activity after activity after activity. And even things that seem spiritual, but when the world gets still, our soul begins to tell on us. And that's why we're already promoting things like women's camp. All right? Man camp, woman camp, woman camp. Man camp. That's why we're promoting things like that, right? Because it's an opportunity to disconnect, to get quiet, and that's a little scary, but we go together, right? We're towing that line together. Right? Listen, it's because of this. There's a gap between what we present and what's actually present. You see that difference there? Or there's a big gap between what we present to the world, what we even present to ourselves, and what is present within us, and who we are as sons and daughters of the God Most High. It's the space where have settled for sounding holy instead of being holy. Like the God we just sang about and how holy he is. Set apart. That's what holy means. Different. On the throne. Set apart. Right? A space where we raise our hands in worship, but we keep our hearts closed to the people that God is asking us to maybe forgive. A space where we post God is good on Facebook, but we doubt his goodness every time life gets a little bit inconvenient. Right? We're talking about this space where we talk about faith like it's a theory, but we won't trust God enough to obey him when it costs us something. A space where we speak in churchy tones on Sunday, but use the same mouth to tear down people on Monday. A place where we look good, but Foundry Church, we feel broken. There's a disconnect. Does anybody else ever have this feeling every once in a while? Sometimes, maybe all the time, right? Anybody else besides me feel like they're just faking it until they make it? Is anybody else just faking it? Right? Yeah, me too. Right? But here's the good news, Foundry Church. You're in the right place today. Whether you've been here a million times or this is your first time through the doors. Right? You're not the first person to feel this way, and you're definitely not the only one in this room. Right? So let me take a step back and zoom out here for a second. We are in the final series, or the final sermon of a series of sermons that we've been calling Strange Things. Right? And this week, we're looking at a story from the life of Jesus that is just a little bit, just plain weird. Right? And we've had some doozies, haven't we? Right? We started strong with some weird, strange stories. And we're going to finish just as strong here. Right? This story that we're going to look at today, it's not the kind of story that you see painted on the kids' Bible church study rooms downstairs. It's actually kind of confusing at first glance. It's short. It's surprising, and it leaves you with a few questions about who Jesus is. But I think if we lean in, Foundry Church, this story is going to help us be the real thing, to close that disconnect, to close that gap. Right? Not the fake, not the filters, not the church face, whatever that means to you, but to be the real deal. A son and a daughter of God, in the highs and in the lows, on the mountaintops and in the valleys, a disciple of his, a follower of his who makes other followers of his. So if you have a Bible, turn with me to Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21 is where we're going to be today. If you don't have a Bible, as always, you can use the Bibles that are in the seats in front of you, and you can take those Bibles with you. They're like in every other chair. You can take those Bibles with you. They are free for you to have, to take, to use, to give away. Matthew is the first book in the New Testament. Use the table of contents if you need to. That is what it is there for. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 21. That's the big 21. And as you're turning there, let me just give you a little bit of context. Right before what we're going to read today, Jesus, he rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. In what we now call the triumphal entry. Right? And people are losing their minds. Right? They're going straight crazy. They're waving palm branches. They're throwing their coats on the road. People are shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna. It's what we celebrate each year on what? Palm Sunday, right? And this is what they're doing, right? It's like the first century parade, and everyone's pumped, right? Maybe the disciples are throwing candy from a fire truck. Who knows, right? They're not. Don't quote me on that. Fire donkeys. Right? Everybody there, everybody that's waving those palm branches, laying their coats down, even the disciples who have been with Jesus and still don't really fully grasp what he's about to do. Everyone's thinking, man, this is it. This is it. Woo! Right? It's here. It's happening. The king is here. He's about to take over. He's about to give the old 1-2 to Rome, right? And then something crazy happens. Right? Not our story for today. Right? But another wild one, right? We just need this for context because this is crazy. After Jesus enters into all of this fanfare, he goes to the temple and he's not there to sign autographs. Right? Nope. Jesus walks in, and as he's walking in, he's making a whip. Right? I love it. Right? And he starts flipping tables. He's WWE style from the top rope, throwing down, right? He's throwing out the money changers. That's what he's doing. We read that story there in Matthew 21. He's telling people, this place was supposed to be a what? A house of prayer. And you've turned it into what? A den of thieves. And so then he gives them the elbow drop. He flips their table. Right? This is not polite, golf clapping Jesus. Right? Can you imagine if the rooms downstairs, like the kids' small groups room, we have Jesus like doing like a elbow drop off the top rope onto painted on the wall. Like, that just doesn't happen. It's a weird scenario of stories that are happening here. Right? This place was supposed to be a house of prayer, he says, and you turn it into a den of thieves. This is not polite. Right? This is passion from Jesus. Right? Braid my own whip, fire in his eyes. Jesus, and Jesus is on the move. He's about to be crucified, but first he has some business to attend to, right? After all the excitement, after everything happens, we have our strange story for today. So let's read it together. Matthew 21, starting in verse 18. In the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry. Business. And seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and he found nothing on it but only leaves. And he said to it, may no fruit ever come from you again. And the fig tree withered at once. All right, today's sermon is called When Jesus Gets Hangry. All right? They didn't have Snickers back then. All right? You see, not everyone got that one. Thank you. Thank you. All right? Let's just stop here for a second and talk about this. Right? Because we can read this and we think, all right, Jesus, calm down. Whoa, buddy. Right? You're not yourself when you're hungry. Have a Snickers. Right? Right? What did that fig tree ever do to you, Jesus? Right? Is he secretly allergic to figs? Like, what is going on? Right? Did the tree cut him off in traffic earlier? I don't know. Like, did it leave a bad Yelp review on his ministry? I don't know. We're like, what is going on here? So let's break this down because, church, this isn't Jesus just having a rough morning or picking innocent plants for sport, like picking on them for sport. There's more to the story, starting with the tree. Right? Fig trees, like all plants, have what? Seasons. Man, you guys are smart. Right? In the spring, wait, was that you that said that, Stephen, because you have my notes? Okay. I was like, wait a minute. Right, fig trees, like all plants, they have seasons, right? They have a harvest in the spring before the main fig harvest in late summer, they produce these little early figs that they call tagish. I can't even say it right. Right? It's like this little fig, right? They're not as sweet as the real deal, but they're edible. They still ate them for nourishment. And they're a sign, when they got these, they're a sign that the tree was edible. It was healthy, that it was going to produce a good crop. And here's the important thing to know about those early figs. They grow before the leaves pop, okay? So when Jesus, he's walking up and he sees a fig tree kind of off into the distance full of leaves, that's basically the tree advertising, hey, I've got fruit. I've got something for you to eat, even before the main harvest, right? There's these little figs. That's what he's thinking. Leaves mean, at the very least, you should find some of those little early figs. But as Jesus gets up close and there's nothing, there's no early figs, there's no late figs, no fruit at all, just leaves, that's the whole problem. Right, look at it like this, right? The tree was showing all the signs of life, but when he got close, and when he got his nose up there was no life to be found. Right? There was no life to be found at all. And remember, Foundry Church, where he just came from. The temple. Right? The very place God's people believed that God's presence dwelled. The place that was supposed to be what? Full of life. Alive with worship and prayer, justice, mercy, sacrifice, honor, glory to their God. The place that was supposed to what? Bear fruit. Right? Fruit of repentance, of faith, transformation, of revival and restoration. Fruit of a forged life on God. And it wasn't. It was just a glorified shopping mall. Where people were more interested in buying their way out of guilt than actual true repentance and revival by turning to God. Where the appearance of holiness covered over the absence of true life. He just left that. Right? That's what he just experienced at the temple. Right? So Jesus, he sees a tree that looks good, but it's not doing what it was made to do. Jesus sees a reflection of what he just experienced at where? The temple. Right? Jesus wasn't mad at leaves. He was calling out a system and hearts that had traded actual fruit for the performance of religion. Right? He sees a system of people that look impressive on the outside, but were spiritually dead and dry and withered on the inside. Right? It's a heartbreaking image, Foundry Church, if you think about it. Right? A green, leafy temple with no fruit. A church full of noise, but empty on the inside. A community full of activity, but void of the heart change that our God desires. A person who looks fine on the outside, like they got it all together, but feels completely drained on the inside, tired of pretending, worn out from faking it, and just craving something real. And Jesus, he isn't shy about showing his pain at this image, of this illustration. He uses the fig tree as a living parable of sorts, a living illustration. And the point of the parable is simple. Appearance is not the same as reality. Right? Appearance is not the same as reality. Leaves are cheap. Leaves hide. Leaves, they comfort. Right? But figs, they feed. They restore. They nourish. Right? He's saying, in fact, you can look the part, you can sing the songs, you can fill the building, but if there is no fruit, if your life isn't changed, if you aren't putting the hammer down on the anvil, if you're not loving, giving, forgiving, and serving, then something is wrong. You see, fruitlessness is not something that God overlooks or ignores, right? Fruitlessness has consequences. Right? When a tree doesn't bear fruit, it's not just disappointing. It's a sign of something that is wrong at the root level. And that is exactly what God sees in our lives when when the outward shows of our life, it doesn't match the inward produce of what we're supposed to be and what we're created to bear. Right? Fruitlessness means missed opportunities to reflect his love. Right? Missed opportunities to nourish this local outpost, his kingdom that he has us in. It means missed chances to serve others. It missed opportunities to grow in his grace and make a difference in the world that he has placed us in, Foundry Church. And so God is not indifferent to that. Right? Right? He's passionate. That's what's so cool, right? He's passionate because he's passionate about us living fully alive, fully fruitful lives. Right? But here's what I want us to hear. This isn't just harsh judgment. It's not just a curse on a tree or a rebuke to a people. It's also deeply pastoral. Right? Deeply loving, deeply, in a way, of being a great shepherd like he is. Right? Jesus, his action isn't meant to shock the disciples awake, to pull their eyes off the surface and show them the reality underneath. Right? It's a wake-up call to face truth honestly and to move forward to something better. Right? Let's look at the next few verses, 20 through 22. It says, when the disciples saw it, right, the tree wither at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, how did the fig tree wither at once? And Jesus answered them, truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to this fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. Listen, man, I mean, this can feel sort of like a little bit of whiplash, right, when we're reading this. First, Jesus, he's just like killing trees, right? And now he's talking about faith. Right? And not just any faith. Right? He's starting to talk about faith that can move mountains, faith that can do the impossible. At first, that feels like a sudden flip from judgment to power. Right? A little bit of whiplash. But if we remember the context, this makes sense. It makes complete sense. Right? If we remember the context, this isn't a curse and despair moment. It's a let's wake up and trust moment. Right? That's what we're dealing with here. Jesus is saying, yes, fruitlessness has consequences. Yes, reality is serious. Yes, I may flip some tables over in your life, but there's hope. Real hope. Right? I'll put your faith in me, like type of hope. If you put your faith in me, there will be hope to the ends of the earth. It's a call to stop pretending. Right? To stop covering up, to stop hiding behind leaves, and to step into a faith that grows real fruit. The kind that will last, the kind that can move mountains into the sea. And that mountain-moving faith is not just some metaphor that Jesus threw out after destroying the fig tree to make us feel better. He meant it. He really meant it. Listen, church, it's like this. Look at it like this, right? If Jesus calling on our faith that isn't real and bears no fruit, makes our heads kind of hang low right now, and we're thinking, that's rough, right? Then what he says next ought to make our jaws drop, right? Nothing will be impossible for you, is what he says. Now, that's not some religious hype. That's not or a million south of the border billboards down 95. Right? That's not Jesus trying to fire up the crowd even. That's a real promise from the Son of God, Emmanuel, God with us. It's like a blank check just waiting to be cashed. Amen. Right? So the question begs to be asked, how would you actually live if you believed that nothing was impossible? How would you actually live if you believed that nothing was impossible? I mean, if you really believed it. And listen, I know, I get it. You've been hurt. You prayed for that thing and it didn't happen. You believed that the door still stayed shut. You believed with everything that it should be open. You've seen people abuse verses that are like this, twisting them to build their own little kingdoms, and it made you kind of want to burn this whole idea down. But here's the thing, right? Look at it like this. Your disappointment doesn't change who God is, and it doesn't rewrite what he has promised. Right? You can't let your pain become your theology. Right? Just because somebody lied about what mountain moving faith looks like doesn't mean the real thing doesn't exist. And to be clear, I'm not talking about that name it, claim it nonsense. All right? Right? We're not going to jump into that ditch, right? But that doesn't give us permission to sit in the other ditch on the other side of the road anyways. Right? The one where we're okay with a faith that looks good on the outside, but is just as powerless as anything in life. Right? Jesus says we are meant to move mountains, to see the impossible happen because we trust him. And if we're not seeing mountains move, right, it's not because he's out of power. It's because we're living way under what he's made available to us. Right? It's like we're sitting on millions in the bank and we're living like we're broke. Right? So what do we do? What do we do with this? How do we keep from becoming withering trees that bear no fruit? How do we actually move mountains? Well, it starts with one simple but very difficult thing. Get real with God. Take the mask off. Be vulnerable. Oh, thought we were a church that, kind of reached out towards the man, right? Vulnerable, that's not a manly word. It's one of the most manly things you can do. Be vulnerable. Get real with God. Right? No more hiding behind spiritual fig leaves. No more copping out. No more being weak, right? No more pretending everything's fine while your soul is running on empty. Right? Let him see the dry places. Right? Let him see the cracks that are in the soil, the places where nothing is growing, because that's exactly where he wants to breathe life into you. And then pray. Right? Not polite, half-hearted, hope you're listening prayers. No. Pray bold prayers. Pray bold prayers. Pray like the kingdom of God depends on it. Right? Pray like your Father is actually able to do more than you could ask, think, or imagine, as it says in his word. Right? Ask him for a faith that's bigger than what you've got. And then don't let go until he gives it to you. Right? And when he speaks, because he will, obey it. Right? Get your butt off the couch. Right? Right? Whatever it is, take that first step. Right? Don't just step off the boat, do a cannonball into the sea. When he tells you to move, move. That's why community is so important. Right? No, I tell the guys all the time, iron councils and different things, I have done nothing in life that is worthwhile. Like nothing in life that has been worthwhile by myself. I have always had a community around me of prayer and support, encouragement, of maybe even just like kicking me in the rear end. Right? Right? So if he says step, you step. If he says give, you give. If he says forgive, you forgive. Faith is not just saying God can. Faith is living like you believe he will. I was recently reading a story about a man who lived in the early 1800s, and you may have heard about this guy or read some of his books, but it's kind of his life is kind of a retelling of the fig tree story in Jesus' promise. This man was named George Mueller. Is it besides me, anyone like, yeah, George Mueller, I love him. Okay. The story's going to rock your world then, because you're never going to hear it. Right? George was from England, and in his early life wasn't exactly a story of holiness. Right? He wasn't a good example of what we would call a young Christian man. Right? In fact, he was into some pretty rough stuff. Stealing, lying, gambling. Right? Even by the time he was 10, he was already stealing money from the government, right? Government money away from his dad, who was a tax collector. He'd go in the office and just stuff his pockets and head on out, right? And while his mom was seriously sick, 14-year-old George was off playing cards and drinking with his buddies in a back alley. 14-year-old, right? When George got old enough, his dad wanted him to get a religious education. Right? This is literally what his dad's like, you're going to get a religious education so you can land a good-paying job as a clergyman. Joke's on him. Right? Right? He said, you're going to get a good job as a clergyman in the state church. Right? Talk about all leaves, no fruit. Right? Right? George was in it for all the wrong reasons, and he was doing all the wrong things. He was just trying to game the system. He was just trying to get over on others, right? There was no life in him, no fruit under his leaves, no figs. Then something happened. Right? While George was in college, he met a man who took him to a prayer meeting, and he met Jesus. His whole life changed. He quit drinking, he quit stealing, he quit lying, right? And right away, something started to happen inside of him. And eventually, he became what we would call a missionary, right? Instead of a comfortable church job in the city, right, that his dad had planned for him, right? When he graduated, he went to walking the streets of England, in the slums, in the poorest areas, and he saw thousands and thousands of orphans living in the streets, and it just broke him. It broke him. It was like a holy discontent in his soul. Right? So George, he listened to God, and he opened an orphanage. But here's the kicker. He had only 2 shillings in his pocket on that day when he opened the orphanage. That's like 50 cents. I don't know the math. All right. No money. No plan B. Just a deep trust that God would provide, because God called him to be a missionary to the orphans in that part of London. And here's what happened. Over time, God provided everything. Buildings, right? Caregivers, food, clothes, everything that these children needed. time and time again. There's this famous story about George where one morning he woke up and everybody was in a frantic pace running around him, and the orphanage was completely out of food. There was nothing. 300 kids at that time. 300 kids and no food in the house. But George, he told the house mother there, bring the children into the dining room. Just bring them into the dining room. Right? There's no food, but bring them into the dining room. And then with faith, he prayed and he thanked God for the meal that he was about to receive and to share with these kids. And just minutes later, there was a knock on the door. It was a baker who said, man, I just couldn't sleep last night because I had this sense that you would need bread today. So I got up and I baked 3 batches. Here they are. And then as soon as that baker left, a milkman and his truck, or his wagon thing, broke down in front of the orphanage. Right? And the milkman offered the milk that would have spoiled before they could get it back to the warehouse, right, if he didn't unload it. Right? This isn't just a story about bread and milk, loaves and fishes like the parable, right? It's a story about mountain-moving faith. It's amazing. And he goes on and he ministers and pastors and serves thousands and thousands of kids. Right? George Mueller didn't get up that morning and let fear be his first move. He didn't let fear be his first move. He didn't pretend like everything was okay. I would have been like, it's all good. It's good. It's good. Everything's fine. No. He started. He didn't start scrambling. He didn't send somebody to run into town. He didn't post a Facebook message or ask for help, right? I'm not saying those are bad things, but that's not what he did first, right? No, he sat 300 hungry kids down at a table with nothing on it, and he prayed like the God who called him into that ministry was already in the kitchen making bread and milking the cow, right? That's not polished, right? That's not for show. Right? That's the kind of grit and tenacity that actually bears fruit. That is what forging a lifelong reliance on God looks like. Right? That's what Jesus was talking about when he said, nothing will be impossible for you. Nothing. See, some of us, we've been too busy, Foundry Church. We've been too busy calculating the cost of bread to even think about praying for bread first. I'm not saying, right? I used to work for a preacher that said, you pray like it all depends on God and you work like it all depends on you, right? So I'm not saying you just don't work, right? But I think sometimes we're too busy asking and replying with what ifs, right? We're like, what if? That we never ask, what is possible? What is possible? We've gotten so used to living with a weak faith that it just feels normal. Right? Almost comfortable to go through the motions without really expecting God to show up and to show off. We've settled into a faith that's more about routine than reliance upon. We check the box on prayer, but we don't really believe anything will change. We sing the songs, but we don't expect the Spirit of God to move. We hear the promises from Scripture, but we live like they're nice ideas and not realities. It's like we traded the thrill of trusting a living God for the safety of managing religion that won't rock the boat or cost too much. But here's the hard truth. When our faith gets small, God's power feels distant. Man, I know these are hard lessons. You might leave here feeling like you just went through a boxing match. But when we stop expecting miracles, we limit the movement of heaven in our lives. We don't have to live like this. In fact, man, God hates the idea of a faith like that. So much so that he destroyed a tree to show us a better way, to show us that the opposite can be true for us, right? When our faith grows, God's power rolls in. That's our mindset. Right? It's like a thunderstorm, unstoppable, unavoidable, and in our corner. It's there in our corner. Right? The God we follow invites us into a faith that is bold, it's fierce, it's fearless, a faith that expects mountains to move because he said so. And there's no question about it. George Mueller, he knew this. Jesus knew this. And now we know it. The same power that withered that poor fig tree, the same power that fed those 300 orphans, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you, to me, to us. With that power, we can live like we've actually got millions in the bank instead of scrapping by on spiritual pennies. So ask yourself, what is the mountain you need moved? Maybe for you, it's not 300 mouths to feed. Maybe it's a marriage that looks like it's got nothing left. It's barely hanging on. Maybe it's a diagnosis that feels like a death sentence. Maybe it's your own heart that just feels cold and barren. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like, remember, Foundry Church, the fig tree, and do 3 things that we talked about. Be real with God. Pray bold prayers. And obey his voice. Church, mountains don't move just because we stand around admiring them and hoping for a miracle. Right? We're not just standing at the base of the mountain being like, it's beautiful. Yeah, it'd be cool if it moved. Mountains move when we put our full trust in the one who made them, and then take that step of faith like he's already proved he is faithful. So don't just sit at an empty table hoping for bread and milk, or stand at the base of a mountain staring up. Get honest with God, get real with God, ask for what only he can do, and move when he tells you to move. That's how the impossible starts to become